Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem Rakakadash. Double honors, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching the truth and sincerity. And shout out to Yakims out there in four quarters of the earth proclaiming this truth. Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem Rakakadash, Bracha them. So there hasn't been a lot of media coverage on this, but the government is in a partial shutdown, and so, that's telling you that Babylon the Great ain't looking too good. As you get into this, man, its economy has tanked, and that's what they're not telling the people this time.
Government shutdown, which did begin early Saturday. Our Emily Wilkins joins us now. Tell us when it might end, Emily. Sarah, that is a great question. Look, if you're Speaker Mike Johnson, you're hoping that the shutdown's going to end by Tuesday afternoon. There's already concerns growing in his razor-thin majority about this bill, despite passing the Senate with strong bipartisan support. House Democratic leaders have signaled that far fewer of their members are going to support voting for this spending bill. Yet Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, he told MS Now over the weekend that while Senate Democrats might have had a say, House Democrats have yet to weigh in.
Legislation that's going to be in front of the House on Monday, we need a full and complete debate. And what I've made clear to House Republicans is that they cannot simply move forward with legislation taking a my way or the highway approach in the absence of House Democrats convening.
Now, it's not clear how many Democrats might vote for the bill. Some of them certainly might join Republicans, but Republicans are likely going to have to go it alone on a key procedural vote tomorrow. If there are no attendance issues, Republicans can only afford to lose one member before they run into issues. And there are members out there with concerns. Some House lawmakers have argued that the Senate-passed bill does not do enough for the Department of Homeland Security. Remember, they're just continuing funding, not giving new funding. Others are demanding a bill requiring voter ID be added to the larger funding package. Now, the bill would continue the funding the department for 2 weeks. That, of course, is meant to give lawmakers more time to come to an agreement on restrictions for ICE and CBP. But even at that point, guys, it's unclear what kind of agreement they're going to be able to form and whether or not we're going to see something where, the rest of the government might get funded and DHS is kind of strung along from week to week to week. Guys?
Meantime, Emily, you mentioned the House margin. A lot of discussion about Texas 18, the special over the weekend. Do we think Menifee gets ushered into office despite the shutdown?
Carl, what we have been hearing is that he is going to be sworn in before these votes. That's why we have a one-vote margin, because he will be there. And of course, as I think you've noted, really some major swings in Texas when it comes to Democrats doing very well in areas that Trump carried by double digits. Of course, a long way to go before we get to the midterms in November. But I think this is giving Democrats a lot of confidence that they are doing the right thing by focusing on immigration and trying to push back a little on some of the policies that we're currently seeing in place.
Are we going to miss another jobs report on Friday if this thing is still going on?
We could, Sarah. I mean, yes, if this is still going by Friday, we're going to miss a jobs report. Again, we could see issues when it comes to people applying for IPOs, when it comes to folks at the airport showing up for air traffic control and TSA. I mean, obviously, as we saw the last time, the impacts really don't start to hit until you start getting 2 weeks, 3 weeks into it. No one wants to go that far. No one wants another major shutdown. But at the same point, some of these issues among House Republicans are going to have to be addressed before the big vote tomorrow afternoon.
Emily, thanks. Appreciate it. A lot going on in D.C. today, Emily Wilkins.
Yep, and hopefully it stays closed.
Every leader's journey is shaped by a handful.
So there you have it, though. And then, of course, you got these very few files coming out because, of course, man, the part indicating Trump, well, that's been hijacked. That's been redacted. FBI memo says Israeli state compromised Trump. Epstein had Mossad ties. The document cites a source linking Jared Kushner and a religious Zionist group accused of seeking to hijack Trump's presidency. So there you have it. That's why he has to march into this war against Iran, because he has to do it, or else. Memo says that Trump was compromised by Israeli state that convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein worked with Israeli intelligence that a Zionist religious group called itself Chabad Lebech sought to hijack his first term in office. The memo, written in 2020, formed part of an FBI investigation into domestic or foreign influence over the U.S. electoral process. It draws on information from a confidential human source and appears among a vast trove of Epstein-related files released by the U.S. Justice Department. So, like everything else, though, you know. On the day Trump was elected president, Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner were at the gravesite of Rabbi who was the major powerful rabbi in the Chabad network, memo states. The source goes further, saying Trump has been compromised by the Israeli state and Kushner is the real brains behind his organization and presidency. The memo also says Epstein worked with the U.S. and Foreign Intelligence, CHS, and convinced Epstein was a co-opted Mossad agent, it says prior to the FBI reporting. Epstein was close to the former Prime Minister of Israeli state, Ehud Barak, and trained as a spy under him, the memo adds. Epstein and Barak had a decade-long relationship. Barak, who was the senior Israeli military intelligence figure earlier in his career, visited Epstein's New York townhouse more than 30 times between 2013 and 2017. So, like everything else, though, you know, Trump is all over it, but you'll never catch that in the mainstream news. You know, so, like everything else, though, pedophile elite, untouched. You know, you can't convict Trump. As this goes into.
So it was like 2015, I think, when pedophilia and child sex trafficking became central to a presidential campaign. Donald Trump was promising that we were going to get to the bottom of this Epstein stuff. And then fast forward all the way to, like, you know, leading up to 2024 and then into his second presidency, the Trump 47 administration, and we have the DOJ had Pam Bondi saying that she has the Epstein files on her desk. In anticipation, of course, everybody's waiting for this vindication. Everybody's waiting for Trump to prove that he had no associations with this guy and that we were going to bring down all of these child sex trafficking networks that Q was telling us all about. Q hung its hat on exposing child sex trafficking networks. And we know all about adrenochrome and Pizzagate, which we're going to get into Pizzagate as well because these files now confirm everything that we already knew to be true. But I want to get right into it. I have Ryan Matta here with us, and nobody has been researching and documenting sex trafficking networks better than Ryan Matta has. He has a whole documentary on this called Trafficked, and you've been in the jungle, you've been all over the place exposing child sex trafficking networks. So this is all in your wheelhouse, but we've gone from people telling us that there were no tapes, these things don't exist, they're a Democrat hoax, I don't even want your support if you're going to ask me questions about Epstein anymore. I mean, that's what Donald Trump said on the tarmac with Howard Lutnick standing right behind him, who, by the way, was Jeffrey Epstein's neighbor. And then we have Ben Shapiro, who told us this.
Thousands of hours of tape. There are, by the way, but they are child pornography. The reason the FBI is not releasing them is because those tapes do not include underage people with third parties on Epstein Island. That is not what the tapes are. I also have sources in the federal government who are covering this stuff and have seen the documents. Okay, those tapes are just child porn. That's all.
So he's telling us that he has people who's viewed this child porn. That's all it is. There's no blackmail. There's no bribery. This isn't somebody working on behalf of a foreign nation. And now we know that, in fact, Jeffrey Epstein was working as an agent of Mossad on behalf of the Israeli regime. So from your analysis of the recent file releases, what specific connections emerge between Epstein's network and Mossad or Israeli intelligence operations, and how does all of this tie into the documented blackmail efforts?
You know, I think one of the most interesting takes was the Ehud Barak conversation with Peter Thiel that just got released. I think it was like a 3-hour conversation, and somebody sifted through the entire thing and found like a 2-minute segment where Peter Thiel, or where Jeffrey Epstein is communicating with Ehud Barak, telling him that he needs to pay attention to Palantir, and a gentleman by the name of Peter Thiel. So everything that we've been hearing about Peter Thiel and his connection to Israel, it doesn't seem like it's a conspiracy theory anymore. It seems to be true. And then you talk about what his Jeffrey Epstein's connections in Ukraine and his connections to the potential coup, or not the potential coup, the eventual coup that took place in Ukraine, where you could say that Jeffrey Epstein played a role in everything that went down in Ukraine, which led to the Ukraine war and all the people over in Ukraine getting murdered. It seems like Epstein wasn't just some human trafficker that was there to blackmail people. It seems like it was a lot darker, and Epstein was a lot more involved with all intelligence agencies. He was working on behalf of Mossad, but it was almost like he was co-opting the CIA and our intelligence agencies to blackmail U.S. politicians so that way our government could serve and work on behalf of Israel.
Which is what they have been doing. And the coup that Ryan is referring to is the 2014 violent coup that our CIA effected in Ukraine. And they went to Jeffrey Epstein for advice on Ukraine. This guy was so powerful, and these people knew that they could move any government, any politician, they could move entire militaries, they could They could move an entire American-based intel machine, the CIA, to go in there. They could employ the media to make it look like it was like a BLM-style uprising, like it was a positive thing, like these people were overthrowing some kind of a rogue dictator, when in fact, this was a democratically elected administration where both sides agreed the vote was fair and that Ukraine had like democratic representation of the people. And so they went to Jeffrey Epstein knowing that he was powerful and influential enough to move the CIA, to move the military, to move the media, and to effect that coup in 2014 to install Zelensky, where since that installation over, 12 years ago now, has led to mass graves in the Donbass and all kinds of atrocities and war crimes being committed by the Azov Battalion and others. I mean, everybody remembers the Ukraine war. It's been a while since we talked about the Ukraine war, because, and it's still ongoing. It's a brother's war. It's Christians killing Christians, but we've been so inundated with everything coming out of Gaza, which we can get to here in a moment. But I mean, you pointed to figures like Les Wexner, other enablers. How do the affiliates with Zionist causes appear to shape the targeting of influential individuals in politics and technology for the strategic advantage that they seem to now have, using Jeffrey Epstein as kind of a conduit to achieve all of this?
You know, it's interesting how it all works out, because it seems like Jeffrey Epstein played a very key role with these intelligence agencies on moving money, moving weapons, making connections, removing dictators. Our government is extremely good. You know, I forget, it was the ambassador to Mexico, we found out, the previous ambassador under Obama, impregnated an 11-year-old girl. And I came on your show, and we broke the story about Todd Robinson and his offshore bank accounts, and how he was throwing the Diddy-style freak-offs in Guatemala at his ambassador's mansion. And he was having the cartels deliver 12-year-old boys to his parties like eye candy. And one of the little 12-year-old boys got sexually sodomized so bad that he was hospitalized. And the last time that they seen his parents and him alive was that day at the hospital when she filed the police report. And allegedly, she's on an island in Costa Rica, and they're getting paid $5,000 a month just to stay out of Guatemala, so the Guatemalan authorities can't talk to them. But you see how this works here. When the president appoints ambassadors, but the ambassadors don't work for the president. They work on behalf of Mossad and the intelligence agencies. And once you appoint an ambassador to a country, and Mossad's been operating in that country, the CIA's been operating in that country, USAID and all these NGOs have been operating in that country for decades, the ambassador in that country becomes more powerful than the president. And that ambassador's job is not to serve the president of the United States, it's to serve our intelligence agencies and Mossad. So we go over and we topple these governments and we install these dictators, and it's never to benefit the country. It's obviously not to benefit the United States. We've overthrown 100 countries over the last 50 years. Are we paying less in taxes? You would think we'd go, oh, hey, so we're going to go overthrow Venezuela, and we're going to get all this oil, and the American taxpayers, you guys are going to pay 5% less in taxes next year because we're getting all this money from oil. We don't benefit at all.
Never. Every single time it acts as a detriment to America and to Americans. Our national security is more at risk. We are not safer. We go further and further into debt. We are not more prosperous. We are not richer.
Nope.
There is not one war. And every single year since 1937, by the way, the United States of America has been involved in an intervention, a regime change, a conflict, or a full-blown war. Every single year since 1937, we have lost American lives, and none of it has been to the benefit of the United States. And all of it has been to the benefit of Israel.
And to take it a step further, it's never a benefit to the country that we're overthrowing. Look at El Salvador. El Salvador being the perfect example. For 70 years, we drove them into 2 civil wars. We collapsed their currency. We collapsed their civilization. It led to millions, or probably hundreds of thousands of El Salvadorians being slaughtered over a 70-year period. And did that benefit us? Nope. Did it benefit El Salvador? Nope. But they got El Salvador's vote in the UN, right? Israel did. So that's the plus positive out of it. Bukele comes in, the first thing he does is he cuts off the money, cuts off USAID, and pretty much kicks the United States government the hell out of his country. And in 3 years, he turns it from the deadliest country in Latin America to the safest country in the world. If any of these governments anywhere around the world have a U.S. military base, or you have U.S. NGOs operating in your country, they are not serving you, they are not serving your citizens, they are not making your country a better place. They are serving their handlers in Tel Aviv, and they are there to extort your resources, they're there to extort your citizens, your money, your wealth. And then once you
and to take your children. Remember what the Russian soldiers talked about finding in Ukraine. They found organ harvesting operations for children.
They have baby harvesting bunkers in Ukraine where women go and specifically give birth. And they're in these underground military nuclear silos for like months on end while they deliver their children. And the second that they deliver that child, it's no longer theirs, it's gone. It's going onto the market, it's getting sold. And the women are kept there, they say, by their own choice. But are they really? Do we really know what's going on in Ukraine? Do you really believe it's by their choice? No, hell no.
And like everything else, though, you see, the least of the flock. And, Esau's being exposed on a daily level. And you have truthers like this channel here, doing it because we, the prophets, have been doing it for so long. We've been exposing Esau Edom. And like everything else, though, they eventually tell themselves because, the elite, the 1%, doesn't benefit the rest of the 99%, which do make up Edomites. So, hey, Esau's government doesn't even benefit his own, White privilege? Oh, they're called rednecks, you see? That's the nigger word for an Edomite, is calling him a redneck, a lazy bum, a redneck, a dumbass. You know, it's an insult to them. So guess what? They're profiled too. You know, by these 1%. You know, and like everything else, though, you know, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked are in authority, the people mourn, which include the Edomites. The Edomites are mourning under this rulership. Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0 may involve Russian drones with crosshairs on U.S. homeland. Russian military-focused telegram travel, Rybird, published an assessment that warned President Trump's gunboat diplomacy and the repointing of U.S. Department of War toward Western Hemisphere could generate drone threat attacks against homeland. Given how the Americans are acting now, the main question is whether the United States will strike Cuba, but when and how it will do so. Cuba, along with Venezuela and Nicaragua, has long stood anti-American stronghold in the Caribbean region. And after the takeover of Maduro, U.S. interest has increased, Ryber wrote on Telegram channel. Ryber laid out a scenario to us that suggests the Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0 is in the making, in which asked, but would the Cubans do this in the event of a conflict? Let us hypothetically imagine that Havana decides to resist Americans and choose to fight. In that case, the already world-famous Enduron strike drones would come to their aid. So, and here it is. Russia may deploy Enduron strike zones in Cuba, a move that could reshape the deterrence and force Trump to consider his options. So now they're saying you may want to reconsider your options. So, you know, another playbook, right? And like everything else, so, you know, this is what's happening in the front lines in Ukraine and other parts, you know, because Russia, of course, has regained a lot of control there, and very much so is the one that could stand up to the U.S. bullying. Yep, Phase 2
The Russian
Gaza.
command continues to systematically implement its plan to establish new bridgeheads in areas that were previously calm. On February 1st, the zone of control expanded to include the village of Bele Berioza in the Sumy region. If this trend continues, the bridgehead will transition from a tactical to an operational problem. The remoteness of this area from the main battlefields poses a particular problem. The regional center, the city of Sumy, is 94 kilometers away. In order to counter the Russian bridgehead, Ukrainian troops will need to deploy at least one combat-ready line battalion to the area. Such units are not readily available. If one were to be deployed, other sections of the front would be exposed. If the problem is not solved now, it will be necessary to transfer a brigade in a week or two. Previously quiet sections of the front in the Kharkiv region have become active. On February 1st, Russian units crossed the border 25 kilometers west of Volchansk and established control over the village of Zilyone. Additionally, Russian troops have achieved multiple tactical successes in the eastern part of the region. Ukrainian units have retreated from Odradne and Durichanske. Russian troops are advancing towards Chubinivka from Buterka, which is on the Russian side. Further north, near the Russian-Ukrainian border, Russian assault groups entered the Grugore tract territory. In the Kupiansk area, Russian units finished clearing Pishane. The southern flank of the front in the Slavyansk area remains extremely active. On January 31st, Ukrainian troops were driven out of Tarietskoye, which is located west of Konstantinovka. Immediately after, Russian units took control of Novopavlovka. The Russian army took control of the village of Setopetrovka in the Uriepole area. Also, Russian assault groups advanced and seized control of Pridorozhnoye, a village located southwest of Ternovatoye. According to reports from February 1st, Russian troops lost control of Malaya Tokmachka on the Zaporozhye section of the front line. The settlement was taken by Ukrainian troops. Recent developments suggest that the Russian command has begun the second stage of its plan. The first stage involved tying down and exhausting all Ukrainian reserves in the north of the country in the battles for Kupiansk, which were successful. The second stage of the operation began with a large-scale offensive in northern Ukraine. The scope of these actions suggests that Russian units are advancing on 7 fronts. However, in total, these actions are spread out over hundreds of kilometers. This will require the Ukrainian command to make some difficult choices.
So that's what's going on with the war over there, which you only really know about the war over there on this channel, South Front. And like everything else, though, you know, it's all about having control over that petrodollar, which doesn't really exist, but, you know, trying to hold on and have a foothold because, again, you know, Saudi Arabia is no longer, you know, just taking U.S. currencies, so the U.S. dollar does not have its dominance. You know, with Saudi Arabia also trading with Russia, becoming a BRICS member, and open to Iran. Chinese oil firms turn to Iran to replace Venezuela crude. See, they already made a move. The drawdown of Iranian oil held in storage is making up for the drop in Venezuela's supply to the world's largest crude importer. The news agency reported citing 2 people with knowledge of the matter. Venezuela oil shipments to China have fallen drastically since President Trump imposed blockade against Venezuela oil tankers attempted to leave the country in December. On the 3rd of January, U.S. bombed the Venezuela capital, abducted President Maduro, and took control of the country's oil. D.C. announced it was replacing Venezuela's oil revenues in accounts in Qatar under D.C. control. Trump allowed global trading firms Vital and Trafigura to sell up to 50 million barrels of Venezuela oil. However, Beijing, owned from PetroChina, has halted its oil purchases from Caracas amid the uncertainty. So they're just being smart and taking their trade elsewhere, and it's helping Iran. I mean, it's a shift. On Saturday, Trump said India will begin buying Venezuela oil, helping to replace the loss of Russian supplies amid U.S. tariff threats. We've already made that deal. The concept of the deal, Trump told reporters. Last year, Trump imposed a 25% tariff against countries buying Venezuela oil. New Delhi has stopped buying oil from Caracas, India, and China, and have focused their shift their policies of oil in recent years due to the aggressive sanctions against Russia, Venezuela, and Iran. So, like everything else, though, you could take Venezuela off the list and just say Russia and Iran, because the U.S. controls Venezuela. So, yeah, he's basically making the others fall in line. And now that, well, okay, they stopped buying from Venezuela, you know, just continue to buy from us, but don't buy from Russia and Iran, you know, because Venezuela is part of the U.S. at this point. U.S.-Israeli Strait hold joint naval drills in the Red Sea amid U.S. buildup in the region. The U.S. and Israeli Strait on Monday announced their militaries had held joint naval drills a day earlier, exercises that come amid a major U.S. buildup in the region to prepare for attack on Iran. U.S. Navy Forces Central Command, Fifth Fleet, announced the drills and said the U.S. guided missile destroyer and USS Delbert D. Black conducted routine maritime exercise with the Israeli state-converted NS Eilat. Combined training demonstrated the strong military partnership between the U.S. Fifth Fleet and the Israeli Navy. Yep, so like everything else, we're preparing for war. Iran's president orders team to open fresh talks with the U.S., but this is a trap that Trump is trying to lure him into, but they already know about it. President Pishkin announced that he has ordered diplomats to seek equitable and fair negotiations as tensions appear to ease. Well, this is a trap, a snare that Trump is trying to lay him into. Not like they don't know this. Iran's president announced that he has introduced diplomats to seek talks with the U.S. as tension around the threat of a military confrontation appears to ease. President Pishkin wrote on social media on Tuesday that he has instructed the country's foreign minister to pursue fair and equitable negotiations. Announcement supports reports that Iran is ready to take part in negotiations being organized by Turkey in a bid to ease the tension. So, like everything else, though, well, we'll play some of this.
Iran's supreme leader has warned that a U.S. attack on his country could trigger a regional war. There's been a tense standoff between the two countries after the U.S. president threatened military action over Tehran's deadly crackdown on anti-government protests.
In the past, Americans repeatedly made threats in their statements saying that all options are on the table and all options include the option of war. Now, this man also keeps claiming that they have sent aircraft carriers and so on. In my view, the Iranian nation should not be frightened by such things. The people of Iran are not influenced by this kind of talk. We are not the initiators of war. We do not want to oppress anyone or attack any country, but in response to anyone who seeks to attack, the Iranian nation will deliver a strong blow. Americans should also know that if they start a war this time, it will be a regional war.
While Trump says he's hopeful for a deal with Iran, a U.S. strike force is now positioned in the region. When asked about Ali Khamenei's comments, Trump didn't rule out military force.
We have the biggest, most powerful ships in the world over there. Very close. A couple of days, and hopefully we'll make a deal, and we'll find out.
Make a deal, or else.
Meanwhile, the Secretary General of Iran's powerful National Security Council, Ali Larijani, has made a statement on X saying, contrary to the artificially manufactured media war narrative, the formation of a framework for negotiations is progressing. All right, Trita Parsi is the Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. He joins us now live from Washington, D.C. Trita, thanks so much for being with us here on Al Jazeera. So we've heard Donald Trump say that he hopes a deal with Iran will be made, and we saw this statement that we just talked about from Ali Larijani, the Secretary General of Iran's National Security Council, saying that the framework for negotiations is progressing. From your vantage point, where does that leave things right now, and what is the most effective way of de-escalating this situation?
There are talks going on in the background, and there is an immense effort by regional states, Egypt, Qatar, Turkey, to some extent Saudi Arabia and Oman, of course, to try to find a solution to this and avoid war. The view of these countries and most countries in the region, with the exception of Israel and potentially the UAE, is that a war would be devastating for the region as a whole. It would not be a quick victory for the U.S. in any way, shape, or form, but would lead to major regional destabilization. The quickest way to avoid this path, because despite the fact that these talks are going on, and despite that some progress is being made, I'm skeptical about the long-term solution unless something much bigger is done. And I think it is, the ball is in many ways in Tehran's court, because I think the most obvious and effective de-escalatory path is for the Iranians to talk directly to Trump. Not a negotiation per se, but just initiate that conversation. We've seen how that has been very effective for other world leaders to be able to diffuse the situation and broaden the parameters of negotiations.
So, Trita, let me ask you, what does that scenario look like? How does that conversation happen, where Iranian leaders have a direct conversation with Donald Trump? Is that a scenario you can see happening in this climate?
I certainly think it can happen. I'm not seeing clear signs that there is readiness in Tehran for this, but I do not rule it out in any way, shape, or form that it can happen. Many things that have happened between the United States and Iran in the last 20 years that turn out to be turning points were things that most people thought could not even happen, yet they did. And this one too can happen. And it could be through the help of some of the regional states, that the conversation actually would be a three-way or a four-way with one or two other world regional leaders on the call as well. And this is, I think, important for Trump, because I am not seeing any other country that has a major conflict with Trump but that refuses to engage with him directly. I don't see what the Iranians have to lose by trying this card, a card that they so far have refused to play.
So, Trita, let me get back to a point that you were alluding to just a couple of minutes ago when you were speaking about the fact that Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has warned that a U.S. attack on his country could trigger a regional war. Is the strategy on his part to instill a fear in regional leaders that a wider, more devastating war may be on the horizon, and therefore to encourage regional leaders who get along with Trump to therefore negotiate a de-escalation?
That is certainly one element of what they're trying to do, but I think the way you phrase it made it sound as if it's a false threat. I don't think it is a false threat. I think the primary audience of this is Donald Trump himself. I think the Iranian calculation amongst those who are skeptical about diplomacy is that Trump has an exaggerated view of Iran's current weakness. Clearly, Iran is weaker than it was 2 years ago, but the view in the White House, perhaps informed by efforts by the Israelis, is exaggerated. And as a result, he's driving a maximalist bargain, and he's essentially thinking that through this military mobilization, he will be able to force the Iranians to capitulate. But the thinking on the Iranian side is a small war, not in the sense that it would be symbolic, but one in which the U.S. attacks and the Iranians give an unprecedented response in the region and against U.S. forces, will quickly dispel Trump of any belief he may have had that this could be a quick, glorious victory similar to Venezuela, similar to other military actions that he's taken, and as a result, force Trump to step back and then come back to the negotiating table, but with a much more realistic assessment of.
So there you have it, though, is that it's not going to be like Venezuela, even though he keeps on bragging about what he did in Venezuela, you know, because it's his recent victory. But like everything else, though, you know, he's under the misguide that, you know, okay, we need to strike Iran. We need to strike him hard because this is the only way we can get Iran, you know. So he's currently filled up with that while being blackmailed with the Epstein files, right? You know, hey, we'll still keep you covered, you know, and this will never come out as long as you do what we tell you. Trump may be setting trap for Iran, similar to escalation before the 12-day war, Israeli-Iran war. Trump is trying to lure Iran into a similar trap to the 12-day war in June last year. So, like everything else, though, yeah, that's what it looks like. Trump has escalated his rhetoric against Iran in recent hours, despite continuing to call for negotiations. Trump is trying to lure Iranians into a trap similar to the 12-day war in June last year. On Wednesday, Trump said a massive fleet was headed towards Iran before warning Tehran must cooperate or risk facing a much worse attack. He urged Tehran to come to the negotiating table. So, you know, again, you know, the report reiterated that the U.S. president may consider revisiting the 2025 scenario and launch an attack after setting a ceiling for Tehran that it could not meet. So, and they already know what history shows them because it's not that far in history, right? It's only recent history. Witkoff and Ghazi set to meet in Istanbul for direct U.S.-Iran nuclear talks. The supreme leader warned that a U.S. attack on Iran would trigger a regional war. So like everything else, they're at the negotiating table, so, it's just a matter of time. But remember what the Israelis said, that we will see an attack against Iran in 2 months. If held, the meeting would mark the first direct engagement between the U.S. and Iranian officials since negotiations collapsed last year due to the 12-day U.S.-Israeli war against Iran, and comes as Washington intensifies military presence near the Islamic Republic's coastline. The renewed contact follows the days of mediation between Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar. So, diplomacy is incompatible with pressure, intimidation, and force. We hope that results will become evident. This is coming from the president of Iran. So, like everything else, though, there we go. Alright, so, like everything else, though, Russia's also said something on the subject. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov slams U.S. threats against Iran as unacceptable as Moscow pushes for de-escalation. In written responses prepared for a press conference, Lavrov reiterated Moscow's efforts to de-escalate tension and remove pressure surrounding Iran's nuclear program. The threats of new military strikes against the territory of the Islamic Republic are absolutely unacceptable. Russia's top diplomat stressed on Monday, warning that any repeat of military aggression would have dire consequences for the West Asia region and international security. Lavrov also warned against exploiting foreign-inspired unrest as justification to repeat the aggression against Iran committed in June 2025, stressing that such actions would seriously undermine global stability. So, like everything else, though, we know that they've arrested a lot of these Mossad agents that were already involved with the rioting. U.S. President openly and publicly encouraged violence by calling for armed rioters to take over state institutions and threatening military action against Iran if confronted. Tensions remain high as U.S. Central Command keeps sending warships, fighter jets, and troops into the region under the pretext of regional security. Iran has already warned that any aggression will be met with a swift and forceful response. So, like everything else, though, preparing for war. But you know where this Valley of Jehoshaphat is. It's going to be in Syria. And there's more about that as well. Erdogan warns SDF against undermining Syria's agreements reached with Damascus. Because, again, Hayat al-Shem in Turkey pretty much is an offshoot of Free Syrian Army, which is an older deal with Turkey. And it's the one that went through. And like everything else, though, Turkey, under the Free Syrian Army, would have control over Syria. Well, they do as Hayat al-Shem, because that was another card that they had. But if you notice the flag of Syria, it's the same flag as the Free Syrian Army. Which, pretty much, though, it's pretty much the SDF has no choice but to integrate, and he's just reaffirming that, because the U.S. has abandoned the SDF anyway, so they have no choice but to deform and de-escalate. President Erdogan warned that the Syrian Democratic Forces against undermining agreements reached with the Syrian government last January, saying attempts to sabotage the understandings would not be tolerated. Referring to the understandings between Damascus and the SDF, which Turkey describes as the armed wing of the YPG, Erdogan said the recent agreements have opened a new chapter for the Syrian people, and anyone who tries to undermine them will be buried under the rubble. He added that Turkey would stand firmly against all those who profit from bloodshed, fuel conflicts, exploit tensions, and disregard human life. Erdogan said Ankara supports peace, stability, harmony, and social cohesion across the region, stressing that Turkey cannot feel safe while fires, conflict, and wars continue beyond its borders. He reiterated that Turkey backs steps aimed at reestablishing peace and stability in Syria while ensuring the country's territorial integrity and political unity. Yeah, because he didn't support Bashar al-Assad But he does support the new Syrian army, or the Free Syrian Army, which is really Hayat al-Sham. They just changed the name, but it's one that Turkey has its influence with, so it's like, well, no wonder why he's saying those things, right? But we know that this future war will be fought in that region because all those places are named in Ezekiel's prophecy of this upcoming war. And I say upcoming war because it's not too far around the corner. You know, you have all the players already in the region. You know. So get that in the NET, Ezekiel chapter 38. And it reads, this is what I say, Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 3. This is what I say, the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn you around, put hooks into your jaws, and bring you out with all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them fully armed, a great company with shields of different types, all of them armed with swords, which means whatever vehicles, etc., and armaments. And that's, of course, talking about Russian armaments, into the region. Persia, Ethiopia, and Put are with them, all of them with shield and helmets, so going to be safeguarding all these countries. They are joined by Gomer with all its troops, which is Turkey, and by Beth Togarmah from the remote parts of the north with all its troops and many people with you. So, like everything else, all these areas are going to be safeguarded. Be ready and stay ready, and all your companies assembled around you, and be a guard for them. A lookout. So when Sergei Lavrov makes comments and says, look, man, this, poking at them is not going to fly. Meaning that Russia is ready to back them up at any time. And like everything else, though, they're eventually going to set their eyes against the Israeli state, who's causing all the destabilization in the region, and they haven't forgotten about losing parts of Syria in that war, which is why, believe it or not, between Turkey and Hayat al-Sham themselves, Russia has a new foot in the door in Syria, despite their efforts to get Russia out of there. In fact, the bases that Russia was at, got closed. Well, Russia still has a sphere of influence in there. And after many days you will be summoned in the latter years and come into the land restored from the ravages of war, which, of course, is talking about those 1948ers. Russia's going to come in there with many peoples gathered on the mountains of Israel that had long been in ruins. Its people were brought out of the peoples, and all of them will be living securely. Because the Israeli state is like one of the, has, like the best, they brag about how the IDF is the greatest, right? But, like everything else, so they're going to get invaded. You will advance and come like a storm. You will be a cloud covering the earth, you and all your troops and all the many peoples with you. And what's that talking about? Well, that's talking about when they should go into the land itself. This is what the sovereign power Yahweh says. On that day, thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise an evil plan. And you will say, I will invade the land of unwalled towns. I will advance against those living quietly in security, all of them living without walls and barred gates. So, like everything else, though, they're going to advance into the Israeli state to loot and plunder, to attack the inhabited ruins of the people gathered from the nations who have acquired cattle and goods, who live at the center of the earth. Sheba and Dedan and the traders of Tarshish, with all young warriors, will say to you, have you come to loot? Have you assembled your armies to plunder, to take away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to haul away a great amount of spoils? They're also going to be coming against the U.S. forces there, because you know that the U.S. is partners with the Israeli state. And I believe this is also going to interrupt New Gaza. You've seen the New Gaza plans of the World Economic Forum. So, it's not too far from there. Therefore prophesy, Son of Man, say unto God, this is what the sovereign power says. On that day when my people Israel are living securely, you will take notice. And you will come from your place from the parts of the north, you and many peoples with you, all of them riding horses, a great company and a vast army. And this is where the Most High Yahweh is going to deal with them. Yahweh Shai and the angels are going to take out Russia and its forces after Babylon the Great is destroyed as well. You will advance against Israel like a cloud covering the earth in the latter days, and I will bring you against the land so that the nations may acknowledge me. When before their eyes I magnify myself through you, O God, meaning that Putin being the example of what the sovereign power Yahweh has to do. This is what the sovereign power Yahweh says. Are you the one of whom I spoke in the former days, my servants the prophets of Israel, who prophesied in those days that I will bring you against them? On that day when Gog invades the land of Israel, declares the sovereign power Yahweh, my rage will mount up in my anger, and the zeal and the fire of my jealousy, I declare on that day there will be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. And that's talking about the nuclear destruction and the destruction coming from Yahweh Shai and the angels. You know, and like everything else, though, that's what's going to defeat and destroy Russia. See, the Most High Yahweh is against all Edomites, which include Russia. You know, see, Edom is kind of divided between Russia and Babylon, but at the end of the day, though, you know, all of Edom is going to be destroyed, you know. So anybody teaching that Russia is going to have rain, it's not a very long reign at all. In fact, at the same time, Russia and its armies are going to be destroyed, because at that point, you know, the only one that could ever stand up to Russia would be the Most High. Nobody else could stand up against Russia. The U.S. is going to lose in that nuclear war. So, like everything else, though, only Yahweh can send Yahweh Shai and the angels to destroy Russia at that point. So, like everything else, though, Apostle Tahar has a video they just put out. And, of course, we're talking about the name of our power, which is Yahweh. And the son's name, Yahweh Shai. But, of course, Bishop Nathaniel loves to play with that name. So we'll play a little bit of this. And I encourage everyone to catch Apostle Tahar. What is the 666 Mark II GMS Truth channel? You know, if you haven't already subscribed. But this is one of the latest videos. Probably got 2 or 3 more by the time I'm doing this. You know how busy Apostle Tahar is. They will say, Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakatham, Jehovah elect, Shalom.
Shalom. Giving all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Shalom to the 144,000 and the rest elect of the Shalom to you all. And I'm going to entitle this video, Nate, or Bish Nate, is playing with the name of the Lord. So this is a video that was put up 9 months ago. As you know or should know, that there was an attack on the IUIC. We took a trip out to what's that place? Nairobi, Kenya. Now I don't know the percentage of Jake to Ham out there, but y'all should know that there was an attack. It was in front of a church. The people of the church, it was the cops and the people of the church that decided to throw rocks at them and wanted to kill them. The church wanted to kill them. And also the police, they shot tear gas canisters at them. They didn't throw. Nate lied like he always does. He's a master liar. Or they threw, the cops gave them tear gas canisters and they threw it. No, you heard the sound of the blast. They had guns that shoot these canisters at them. And one thing about IUIC, they can go to some Olympics. They might win some gold medals too. So anyway, as I've been saying in the past, I said yesterday, one of the videos that I did, I said you have no business being in Africa. And now in Africa, you got a big thing going on. O'Shea Duke Jackson covered it, scamming among Israelites. You have Israelite groups out there, and that is not to say that IUIC is a part of it, but the whole Israelite movement has a bad name in Africa because it's scamming people. And like I said, I'm going to say it again, I'm not saying IUIC. I don't think they do that, you know. I'll give them that much. But anyway, I'm going to make this relatively short. Anyway, he goes on, he's a regular on this guy. He's from South Africa, the individual that you see on the screen before you. He has a show called Something Nice with Dinano, which that's his name, and he has a podcast. Nate's been on his show, on his podcast or platform for more than once, maybe 3 or 4 times. Matter of fact, he did set him up to have a debate with what's this guy, Moses Levy. You know him as Ron Dalton, which he's totally lost. I mean, he comes off as sincere, so I don't really knock him. But he teaches that the so-called white people are the sons of Japhet. That's old school. My parents used to teach me that when I was back in the damn 70s. Oh, the white man, that was the Hebrew thing, the Hebrew Israelite group thing. Oh, the white man, he comes from the seed of Japhet, which is bullshit. And I'm talking about Ron Dalton, he goes against the UFOs, so we're crazy if we're teaching that UFOs. And he really doesn't understand the prophetic part of the book. None of those Yah Israelites, those Yahweh Israelites, those Old Testament Oni Israelites, the Oni Israelites are so-called black people, the Latin tribes and the Indian tribes are not Israelites. You stay away from people like that. Most High's not dealing with them. But anyway, the question should be, is the Most High dealing with Bishop Nate? Because he still refuses to teach the truth concerning the MOTB, the mark of the beast, which he knows that the mark of the beast is a microchip. He knows it. Guarantee he knows it. He just doesn't want to tell his zombies because they might wake up. As long as he's in that power seat, them zombies are going to sit there and believe anything that he says because they're zombies. If there's any of the elect among those zombies, that zombie spell will come off of them, and they are zombies. They are, and that goes. Yawasap is a zombie. Kanai Gabar is a zombie. Ethan is a zombie. I almost got him out of that zombie. I almost got him. I almost freed him from that zombie. I'm talking about Ethan. Deacon Ethan. I almost freed him from that zombie spell, and then the spell jumped back on him because he started believing. He told me. He didn't tell me that I'm lying. You never said that. Be a man about it. Tell me that I'm lying. That you told me in the comment section of one of my videos, this was some years ago, 2017 maybe. You said, you're right, the mark of the beast is the microchip. Then I told you, well, when you're going to call that meeting with Nate and them. And then he hesitated in getting back to me, and he finally got back to me, and this is what he said, and this is what he wrote in the comment, responding to me. He said the bishop and the captain, General Yohana is not ready. So when I saw that, I said, the Most High is going to take. I thought a lot of things, but I said one of the things was the Most High is going to take that right back from him. And guess what? The Most High took that knowledge of the MOTB being a microchip. He took it back from him. And some years later, I said, well, what about the mark of the beast? The mark of the beast already took place. Now, a month before that, you said, we were right, GMS is right, the mark of the beast is the microchip. So guess what? You know what happened? I'm going to tell you what happened. Pursuant to Matthew 13, verse 12-ish, 11, 12, 13, it says, in not too many words, why the apostles, the disciples at that time said, why did thou speak in parables? He said it's for some to know and some to not to know. And there's some that will know, but it's going to be taken away from them, even that they have. So guess what? You got a gem. The Most High opened up your mind to believe what I was saying, and you said the mark of the beast is definitely the microchip. But then the Most High took it from you. Now, is the Most High going to give you that knowledge back when it's time to take the chip? Only time will tell. And if any of you Israelites take that chip, there's no hope of salvation for any of you. Even if you go to pull the chip out, you can't pull that chip out. Nope. Unless you are a damn surgeon. Because Zabak said that. Priest Zabak said, well, you can wait for them last minute and you can pull it. Oh, really? Zabak, I didn't know you was a surgeon. Don't put the mask on and the stethoscope and the white lab coat and get some tweezers and cut that out. Oh, here comes the shit. Let me put it. No, it doesn't work that way.
You can't even get it out of a pet.
Anyway,
has
let me go ahead. The main thing is he's still playing with the name of the Most High because he lets this demon right here, he lets this guy, which he believes he's an Israelite, he lets him lead the prayer. Because the guy said, you want to lead the prayer? Bishop, he said, no, you lead the prayer. Ain't no way in hell I'm going to let anybody lead no prayer. And then he says Jesus, in Jesus' name, then he says Yeshua, He says Yeshua, and then he says another name. I think he says, tries to say Yahuwah and Yeshua. And then Nate comes along and say Yahweh Shai. That's something that Nate can only say. Kanai Gabar, I dare you, I double dare you to say Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai in front of Nate. He'll probably shoot you. It's fucking bullshit going over there. And we still want proof that a GMS member has been in your school for a month. We want that proof. We know you guys are former cops, maybe still are cops. We know you got access to cameras and stuff like that. We know you got pictures of the guy. So you show me the guy, you prove all things. Now, if there was a guy that is GMS that been going to your school, it's not us telling him to go. And guess what? He'll probably be out of there. He better have a good excuse. If anything, if he gets off on anything, he'll be suspended for a period of time. Because he have to apologize to us, and he have to apologize to y'all, and y'all gonna have to accept that apology. So there ain't no way in hell. First of all, what in the hell does anybody from GMS want to be around you guys anyway? You don't have the truth. You guys teach that the Sabbath is Friday, Sunday, Saturday, so now you follow the small hats. You're Saturnalians, man. Look that up. Anyway, let me go ahead and play this. I don't want to make this long. So listen up, listen up, listen up.
With us here this evening in South Africa. Let us know where you're watching from, and we'll let everyone know that the rest of us are here. We'll be joining the stream. We have about 23 people watching. Oh, actually 34. We have IUIC. Bishop Natan. Yes.
Here goes the alligator teeth. It's like Captain Desire them alligator teeth. We're in an urgent time. The world is going to change over, and hundreds of millions of people are going to die. This is not no laughing matter. You know, this is not a sit down. This is not a kumbaya moment. If I ever go on the platform, I'm gonna be straight up forward, man. I'm gonna make it short. I'll make it short. If anything I gotta say, it'll take me less than 5 minutes. We the Israelites, so-called white people, are Edomites. Babylon, America's Babylon the Great, and it's going to be utterly destroyed by fire. If there's 300 million people left in Babylon, they're all going to die. I don't care if it's old women, old men, young women, pregnant women, babies, infants, puppy dogs, iguanas, whatever. Everything is going to be burnt up. So we're talking about hundreds of millions. We're talking about, like I said, if the population of the U.S. is 350 million. Let's say there's 300 million. At least 300 million will die at once. That's a lot of spirits going to the spirit realm. And that's not a laughing matter.
It's also known as the lake of fire.
And they're going to die while it tells you in Luke 17, they're going to be getting married, giving in marriage. They're going to be going to businesses. The adultery is going to be going on. It's going to be business as usual when the missiles come. And it's going to be a bright, sunshiny day.
Now, before we get started, can we start off with a word of prayer?
Okay. Sure you want me? So now, did you just hear what this? Let me bring that back. The guy threw it at him. Do you want to start with it? If you're the leader, don't you supposed to lead the prayer? Let's hear this again. The alligator teeth. Look at that. Alligator teeth.
Before we get started, Bishop, can we start off with a word of prayer?
Okay, you sure you want me to pray? You don't say no shit like that. He threw it at you and you threw it right back at him. You gonna let him lead the prayer?
Let me pray. You prayed the last time. You prayed the last time. Did I pray the last?
No, okay. You don't. First of all, you don't know what to pray to. You don't know what to pray to.
I like my prayer.
Yeah, you like, yeah, Most High in Christ bless. Yeah, you just said it. You like Christ.
Okay. Let's bow down our heads and give a word of thanks.
And this is in a couple of days, maybe a month, after they got had rocks and tear gas thrown at them. And he's smiling, he's alligator teething. And I put a list together in the past of all the scriptures that speaks about you calling on the true name of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai.
I'm 65, and today I'm switching from doing nothing to Tai Chi chair workouts. Hope it's worth it. This is me.
Thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you for the time you have allowed us to.
That was AI, by the way.
Spend with Bishop Nathan. And we pray, Lord, that whatever will be coming out of this interview, of this conversation today, will be uplifting to your people. And we pray for your Spirit to be with us, to guide us in this conversation, so that we also will get those to us. Thank you to Bishop Nathan for giving us the time to blessed may you protect the movement of Israel United in Christ, and may you give them the strength to carry on with the message of letting the people know who Israel is. We ask all this in Jesus' name, just to make some people happy. In Yeshua's name, Yahusha's name. Amen.
Let's bring that back. And there he goes with the alligator's teeth. Looking like a chocodile. There was cook a cake called a chocodile. Anyway, let's go ahead and listen to that again, man.
In Yeshua's name, Yahusha's name, Israel.
You know motherfucking well he's saying the name's wrong, and you smile, you alligator teething.
We ask all this in Jesus' name, just to make some people happy. In Yeshua's name, Yahusha's name. Amen.
Why you throw that in, nigga? See, this guy's playing with the name or the names of the Most High. The guy says Yeshua's name and Yahuwah's name, and the guy smiles. He says, I say Yahushai. But then when we say it, he says that that's demonic. But he can say it. Like I said, what's this guy? Carl Kanai Kabar. You can never say Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. You can never do that unless he tells you to do it. Like you did at the 2022 Passover. Start saying Yahweh like you used to say. Like you and Abba Ya'ala used to say Yahweh and Yahushai prior to 2010. Start saying it and see how fast you get kicked out of the school. You don't get no more of that Showtime money.
Thank you for the message.
And this is why we don't fucking go on no fucking platforms. And if we ever did, we're going to be straight. First of all, I'm leading if it's a prayer to be said, I'll lead the prayer. And it'll be quick. All praises to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. Let's get right into it.
Exactly. You know, be short and simple. You know, we have not changed the doctrine whatsoever, unlike the others that keep changing the doctrine. Hopefully all this has been edifying. Let's on to the next one. You know, you can catch the rest of the video on Apostle Tahar's channel. Shalom.